Sorry about that. So just show audio. If you're looking on YouTube, I'll insert a picture so you don't just have to look at a black screen. But I guess at least you'll get audio. You get something. I guess my camera, the light's on, but I guess the camera's broke. It's interesting. It's always something. We've only had that for like maybe a year and a half or two. Well, must have slammed the lid shut. But you know what I'm saying. I have to learn patience, Mr. Root. All right. The final slide. I showed you the video from Easter of them celebrating Easter, but this is the message. This is from the Troparion, which is kind of like a refrain that they recite all throughout the Easter season. Okay? Christ, and I already recited this, but I just wanted to show it to you on the PowerPoint. Christ is risen from the dead. So the first thing is the resurrection. That Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death. So trampling, with his death on the cross, he has destroyed death, and giving life to those who are in the grave or in the tombs. Okay, so this has effects not just for Jesus. It's not like, hey, yippee, I, Jesus, rose from the dead. It's extended, it's hope for everybody who has died and will die. Okay, it's not just a unique individual event for Jesus. Okay, he is in a way smashed down the gates of Hades, the gates of the underworld. In fact, in Christian pictures and imagery, not so much in the Western church, but in the Eastern churches, sometimes they'll show that. They'll show Jesus standing on the gates of hell with the devil underneath the gates of hell. Again, a very heavy metal image, triumphalistic, Jesus triumphing over the devil, okay, destroying his hold on humanity, releasing humanity from the curse of sin. Okay, so that's the message. That's the essential message. And that's the essential message throughout the whole course. So if you learn nothing else, or you know nothing else about Christianity or the Christian faith, that's one of the main things. What are our sources of authority? If we're going to talk about Jesus, how do we come to know about this man, Jesus Christ? How do we come to know about anything, really? So I want to look at that, the sources of authority. How can the church or the Christian community, how can Christians, God bless you, who are far removed from Jesus, 2,025 years roundabouts, even say anything about this man, this person? It's still cold in here, isn't it? Are you cold being over there by the woman? Why are you over there? Maybe if I close the door, maybe it'll maybe it changes the dynamic or something. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I have no control over the heat or the cold. So I apologize. Well, first, what is an authority? What do we mean by this word authority? There's your definition. Authority. Anything, person, thing that determines, God bless you, your thoughts or your behaviors, how you think and how you behave. Let me get to my page here. From the Latin word auctor, from which we get the word author. The same thing, author. We usually think of author as the writer of a book. But an author has authority. The person has written the book. The person wants to, by reading the book, the person's determining how you're thinking, what images are going to be coming to your head, and stuff like that. That's why maybe, I try to avoid some, reading certain things and try to only read good books, But auctor, originally, the word auctor simply means originator, the origin of something, a creator, a maker, and by extension, a model or a pattern for something. Okay? a model or a pattern. And since I have that italicized and underlined, apparently I thought it was important. So Jesus is our authority. He is the model or pattern for the Christian life. Okay? And we all have experience with authority. Forget about religion, but we all have an experience with authority. People are things that control us. Your parents, maybe not so much now because you're all adults, but teachers, okay? The fact that you come to class, or how you act in the class, with the work that you do. The syllabus is an authority, which I wrote. I'm the author. So I have control over you for this moment at least. The police, I think, obviously. Coaches, if you're in a sport, your coach says you have to be here for practice. You're there for practice, even if you want to maybe be somewhere else. You can still not show up for practice, but then you might not play. Again, the coach is going to decide who goes in and plays and who doesn't, who's on the roster, or excuse me, who's the starter, who's not. I mentioned the syllabus as an authority, controls at least your actions, maybe not so much your thoughts. And usually, and hopefully, I want to try to get the names down. What's the first letter of your last name, Miss? I know you're Miss Barris. Got you. You're there. Miss, what's your first letter of your last name? Yeah. Miss Poland? No. It's almost there. This is how I learn. Okay, Miss Plunkett? Okay, good. Gracie. Alrighty. Miss Plunkett. Hopefully, Miss Plunkett, these authorities are meant to be benign, helpful realities. Okay? Hopefully. Not and if you know with experience, authority can be abused. All right? But I'm taking the attitude that it's a good thing, that it should be something that's a tool that helps us. Okay? Just driving over here, in my car, there are authorities. There are signs that tell me how fast I should go, what the limit should be on my speed. And they control me, for the most part. Shh. At least when the cops are looking. No, I try to drive the speed limit or within a reasonable, what I was taught in my driver's ed class when I was in school. What is a reasonable, a roundabout speed limit? I was told when I was young it was 5 miles above, but I guess now it's 10 miles or maybe even 20 miles. Who knows? Seems like for some people it's 20 miles above. But okay, 5 miles or 10 miles, whatever. That seems to be reasonable. At least the cops seem to be okay with that. But that's an authority, and it's put there for my benefit. I mean, it's a control, but it's not there. It's not there to just control me. Okay, we don't want, we're just going to remind you who's in control, so we'll limit your speed. But the roads, they take the roads into account. Some roads go through towns where there are people and pedestrians, or a school where there might be children, or something's just a highway, so I can go faster. So I might be able to go 65, but if I'm going past a school through one of the towns here, then they want you to go like 20, 25. Okay, I get that. I respect that. It's an authority. It's a man-made human authority. I mean, didn't come from a god or something. All right, there is no logic to it necessarily. I mean, you can still run over a kid at 25 miles per hour. That got your attention, didn't you? You can still run over someone. Let me put it that way, at 25 miles per hour, just as you can run over someone at 65, and they could still die depending on the impact. Okay, so it's a convention. There's some logic behind it. If I'm going slower, I won't cause less damage, hopefully. But it's still just a human construct. It's an authority, and I choose to obey it. I can choose not to obey it, and as I've mentioned the cops a couple of times, and the cops can pull me over and they can give me a ticket. for choosing not to obey that authority. So then I'm punished for not choosing to obey that legitimate authority. All right. That doesn't make the authority evil or anything. It's supposed to be benign so that I'm not speeding and cause harm and accident to somebody else. Religion, just like any other human reality, because humans are involved in religion, and specifically Christianity has authorities for how it views the world and approaches human life. And so these authorities will comprise overarching governing principles or presumed standards of how Christians, if they're going to say they're Christians, how they're supposed to live, think, and believe. And hopefully these authorities are helpful and not meant to just control people. Yes. Here's a picture. This is in case you don't recognize him, this is Pope Benedict XVI, now dead. During, I think, like Holy Week, the veneration of the cross, just an image of, obviously that's not really Jesus, it's just an image to remind us of the crucifixion, and he's kneeling down in front of it. This kind of demonstrates in a symbolic way who the authority is. You know, the one who's kneeling down to the other, you know, the other who's being knelt down to is probably the authority, or at least the image of the one. This is supposed to be an image of Jesus of Nazareth, which tells you something about the position of Jesus of Nazareth and the position of the Pope. The Pope is also an authority in the church, yes. And sometimes people can confuse and think the Pope is the church, you know? Like, especially, you know, with religion, you know, when they report religion and stuff on the news or the media, you know, like, what does the Pope think? Or what's the Pope doing? Or the Pope does this. Or, like, the Pope represents all of Christianity or the whole church, or the whole Catholic Church. No, it's Jesus. Even the Pope is kneeling before, the Pope kneels before his authority, who is Jesus of Nazareth. He has an authority too. And the ultimate authority is Jesus. And this action reminds him of that. What are the basic sources of authority for Catholic or Christian belief? There are two elements. You can see in the PowerPoint, reason and faith. Reason might shock some people because, you know, a lot of times, you know, the definition of religion is that it's unreasonable. You know, it's humanity at its most irrational. Religion is something that makes rational people do irrational things. Well, sometimes. But, you know, if you go on TikTok, you find that human beings don't need a lot of poking and prodding to do irrational things, you know? You know, like pouring ice water all over themselves for no particular reason, you know? Throwing Mentos into a Pepsi bottle for no particular reason. All sorts of interesting things. It's not just religion that has goofiness. We're just a goofy species. You know? So reason and faith. What is reason? Reason is an act of the intellect, of our understanding. Intellect is kind of a philosophical way of saying the mind, or you could say the brain if you want something more naturalistic. Okay, it's an act of our intellect, our understanding, by which our mind thinks about things, theorizes, comes up with ideas of why things are, the things that we perceive in the world, why they are, why they do what they do. We make theories, and we understand in an orderly way. And the word intellect is from the Latin word, which literally means to understand, okay? So reason is also, you could say, understanding. In an orderly way. I mean, if it's disorderly, then we say you're irrational. Or we might say also you have it's a mental illness. That's, you know, like a schizophrenic. One of the identifying characteristics of someone with schizophrenia in its various forms is what we would say irrational thinking, or as they say, a loose association of ideas. You know, a person, you can talk to a schizophrenic And they're using words, and the words do make sense, but when you string them together, they don't make sense, you know? It's like, you know, and the wall came down and smashed the dove, and the dove flew away, and so that's why I had to steal the Twinkie from the convenience store, because the dove wanted a Twinkie, and it was flying away from the wall that was, you know, coming down, you know. Now, every one of those words makes sense. They have a meaning. But string them along, and they doesn't really make any sense. You know, you're trying to find, it's like, you know, what is this? It's irrational. It's not orderly. Okay, it's not orderly. It's disorderly. The word reason comes from our friend Anglo-French. At one time, about 1,000 years ago, French armies from the northwest of France, I believe, invaded England and won and captured England, and in fact ruled England for a while there, such to the fact that the English monarchy was mainly French, even though it was English. So there's this historical connection between the United Kingdom and France and their monarchies and stuff like that, and their language. You know, thousands of French words poured into the English language, which is Germanic at its base. And even to this day, the motto of the English royal family, the royal family, I should say, of the United Kingdom, because it's England, Scotland, and they claim Northern Ireland, but I'm Irish and I won't get into that. Yes. But anyways, it's a number of monarchies, Scotland and England united, and then Northern Ireland. But, you know, their motto is French. It's not in English. What is it? My God and my right, mon Dieu et mon droit. Even though they don't speak French anymore. So if you were in the royal court of England in like maybe 1100 or 1200 AD, you'd have to learn French, because that's what they would have been speaking. Not English. And so a lot of French words came into English, but with kind of like an English flavor, an English pronunciation, okay? And also imitating the way the French was spoken 1,000 years ago, which is different than the way it's spoken today. So you have what's called Anglo-French or English French. So raison, which French is Latin based, so it ultimately comes from the Latin word ratio, reason, so rational, which ultimately comes from the verb reor in Latin, which means to calculate, to think, to make judgments, okay? But also, interestingly, to believe. To believe. Reor. So it has all those elements, not just of thinking and thought, but also belief. I just want to point that out, because how we use it today, usually if someone says, I'm a rationalist, it means they're kind of in a way anti-belief, which they might define as religion. You know, religion is about belief. It's stuff without proof or evidence. But I'm a rationalist. I use my mind. I reason. You know? Okay, that's fine. But embedded in that very word is also belief. So, you know, learn your etymologies, my rationalist friend. Anyways, so thinking. Yes, thinking is part of religion. Maybe even the main part of religion. But it's united to faith, to belief, which is belief in God and in what he has revealed or chosen to tell us about himself or about the world. Why? Because God is truth itself. He knows, the belief is, the assumption is, how reality really is or should be. And can, not that we can't know that, that's where reason comes in. We can know how reality is and should be, but in some cases we can't. And this is another authority to tell us, if he wants to. God's not forced to tell us anything, but if he wants to reveal. So that's where faith is coming in. And again, from our friend Anglo-French, fate. Latin-based word, fides, which simply means trusting in someone or something, reliance, again, belief, properly speaking. But this element of trust. And this goes even with using your reason. Because, I mean, you know, people try to have this hard division between faith and reason, or reason and faith, or science and religion and science. And there is certainly a distinction to be made. Okay, each has its own proper realm in our human existence. But all of them, both of them, I should say, involve trust. Even when I talk about reason or using my rational abilities, I'm trusting that I'm even perceiving the world properly. There's still trust there. I'm trusting that a scientist has done the experiment correctly in his or her laboratory and got valid results. That's why testing is so important, having other people test the results, because they might come up with different ones. And then now you have to say, I can't trust your results anymore because my results are different. We have to explain that. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe it's just as simple as, the person who did the experiment forgot to add something in a control group or something, and it skewed the results. But just because you trust that, and you don't just trust it because the scientist says, oh, I did this experiment and these are my results. Usually the person has to publish it in a peer-reviewed journal. That's important. You can't just put it on his blog, or she can't just, self-publish it on academia.com. You send it to Nature magazine or the Journal of American Medicine or whatever. That's peer-reviewed, meaning other people in the field read the article, read the research, and understand it. Not me. You don't want me reading physics books. I'll be looking in my Bible like, where does it say this? Where's that? Oh, man. And they can then, say, this research looks good. That still doesn't mean it's right. But they might say that this looks good. This article is fine. It's publishable, all right? And you trust the journal, and you trust the people who have reviewed the article, which might even be just one person. Usually they try to get at least two people. Some smaller journals, it might just be one person. So you're, maybe relying on one other person to trust the work of this person. Okay, all right. That's fine. That's part of the scientific method, and it has legitimacy. I trust, but it's no different in religion if I say, well, I trust Moses or I trust Jesus. Well, that's just Jesus. That's just Moses. Okay, fine. Well, I just explained the process of publishing an article, which might still be wrong because people have to test the process, and that's becoming a problem now. Especially the articles I read were basically regarding psychology. I know we have some people studying psychology, but there's now a crisis in psychological science. I don't know if it extends into the hard sciences like biology as well, or physics, except for theoretical physics, because people can't test anymore. One of the essential characteristics of the scientific method, you were taught this in school, right? You have your lab. And you test what the teacher tells you. If you put these two chemicals together, this is what happens. You see it for yourself. We can't test anymore because the tests have become too large and too expensive for anyone to repeat. You have a psychological test where you have thousands of subjects who are tracked over years. Who can repeat that? How do you repeat that? Because that's the essence of the scientific method, that you're able to repeat the experiment as the person did it. You want to know how the universe works? Well, okay, you want to smash atoms together. Okay, you build a collider, this big circular thing, and one atom comes from one end and the other, and when they smash together, they break apart, and you get data, and you can see what are the basic components of the atom and stuff like that. Great, right? You can publish your findings. Who can verify that? How many colliders are there? There's one in Switzerland. It costs billions of dollars to build. It's absolutely huge. Where's another one that they can verify their experiments? You can't. You just have to rely on the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. It's 5 miles long. We were trying to build one in Texas, but it became so expensive, Congress just cut off the money. So they didn't ever finish it. So trust, even in rationality, there's trust involved, not just in faith. We usually, why am I beating this dead horse? Well, it's not dead yet, but I'll beat it a little bit more and make it dead. Because oftentimes people peg trust to faith. Faith is just trust. You don't have any evidence, you don't know anything, you can't prove anything. Well, that's not exactly true. But trust is involved throughout much of our humanity. We have to trust people and what they tell us until we know we can't trust them. Then we have to rethink it. So let's start out with reason. God, why would God, if religion is about faith or control, and God wants us to believe in him and believe what he tells us always, apparently without question, why would any God give us reason? Why do you think? Why would any God, controlling authority like a God, give us the ability to think? At all, Mr. Martin. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We just want to see their patience evolve over time.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, if someone wanted to create a human being, one mind, reason, I guess the one reason I can think they want that is they want to see them be able to think, just adapt. They want to see their creations like be able to understand that.
So adaptation, as thing, that's an interesting point. Yes, that's very interesting. Anybody else think? Yes. Oh, free will. What does free will have to do with thought or reasoning?
It's just free will. It's just the ability to make a decision. You make a decision to decision.
Okay, so you need to think and process decisions you're going to make. Are you sure you have free will?
It's like he like puts thoughts on it and stuff, but like gives us the ability to make those decisions to do what we want.
God puts thoughts in there. You guess. Now you're not so sure. You seem to say.
I think he gives us reason.
Okay, but do you think God also puts thoughts in your head in addition to your reason, your people?
He is in your head. So it's like.
How do you know he said he's in your head?
I don't know, because I didn't know.
Okay. All right, you just know. Okay, that's fine. Interesting.
The good ideas and.
The good thoughts. So you don't have any necessarily good thoughts that happen to come from God.
Well, I can think all the time. Confidence, self-esteem.
Okay, confidence, self-esteem, saying that you're valuable.
Yeah.
That you mean something.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Why would God have to tell you that? Could you reason to that?
There's a lot of people have doubts, and just like human nature, doubt yourself. Not all the time. It's nature to doubt.
Really? Is human nature to doubt that you have value and that you're meaningful? You're a pile of garbage? That's your go-to position? You have to keep kind of reminding yourself that, no, I matter. No, I'm important. No, I'm not. That's your default? Really? That's the human condition? I was having all like committed mass suicide. What's keeping us from not? What's keeping us alive then? It's keeping us from not doing that. Maybe we do have a death wish. We have tons of nuclear weapons. So
I would say reasons. So you want reason. What keeps us going? Or expanding any friends or saying it's human nature. Because some reason it's like reason.
okay. But if I'm, as a human person, think that I have no value, or that I'm not really that valuable, they're human persons too, so they're not that valuable either. So how can they then give me purpose? They're no more valuable, they're as unvaluable as I am.
That's a great point.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think for like the recent part, from what I can see, everyone's valuable and stuff, but everyone has a different path in their life. So God gave us a reason to be here because we all have different paths. We're all gonna do different stuff in our lives. Not everyone's gonna be exactly the same, or not everyone's gonna be, not everyone is gonna go to college, you know. Like he
Oh,
gave
yeah.
us a reason to do stuff that we can do. Like something towards what we like, what makes us happy. So,
Why would God want you to be happy?
why would he want us to be sad?
Well, let's say God's like a dictator. He just wants control. He's an authority. He wants control. He wants you to do what he wants you to do. Like a robot. Program the robot, set it on its way. Why should you be happy? What is happiness in it? Yes, Ms. Plunkett?
Yes, he doesn't control you.
How do you know that?
Because free will. Why?
You still haven't established we have free will. How do you know we have free will?
Because we all have the ability to make mistakes, make decisions. If we didn't have free will, we would all be perfect. We would be made.
Not necessarily.
If he controlled us, then he would make us like him, and we would all be Christians. Mistakes.
Well, I
That's
mean,
free will.
okay, but you are, as a material being, what are you made up of? You're made up of, right, DNA, right? Genetic code, which has a little thing that turns on and off and determine whether you have a certain eye color, certain hair color, you know, all that stuff. And then some people think that also determines how your brain is going to think. And decisions that you will make are already determined by your genetic makeup. There is no, some biologists argue, there is no brain. And neurologists study the human brain. Well, because you have this thing called brain, there are chemicals in the brain, they come together in certain ways, and they determine what your likes and dislikes are, and where you're more likely to go in making a decision that you're going to make, you're more likely to do this than do that. Well, what's a mistake? How do you know it's a mistake?
Well, not just like something, I don't know, like.
Well, what's bad? What's bad?
Bad.
Or you get cancer or something?
Not necessarily not bad, but like.
Oh, all right. Bad like what? Okay, so cancer is not bad.
Like if
Look
you
up-
run and right, so
You think so? I'd say that's physics. How's that a mistake? Well, you didn't intend to do it, but
you didn't mean for it to happen, you don't mean for something to happen. See,
Okay.
it causes a bad outcome.
what if you keep driving your car forward and there's another car coming and they crash because of the momentum? That's all physical law. And you get injured, okay, that's fine. You know that again, that's physical law. The impact of the energy of the impact breaks a bone, or breaks, okay, that's fine. Those things happen, don't they? I mean, it's put excessive force on something, it's gonna break.
Yeah, but they happen for a reason,
Really, there's a reason?
sometimes.
But how can there be a reason if it's a mistake? You didn't intend it, there was no reason. There wasn't the reason you wanted. I got you, let me give us Mr. Bruce.
I feel like it's all about decision making. And I mean, when she's talking about free will, it's your free will to make a decision. And decision making is more up to the person, to, circumstances. There's not really much science behind it. Obviously, there's stuff that goes on in your brain that leads to each decision that you make. But I feel like God gives you the ability to make decisions for a reason, and He doesn't want you to be perfect. He hopes you're the best version of yourself that you can be. But if you make a bad decision, He's there, help you through it. And repent.
How are you not I mean, if I took the word God and substituted brain, how are we not simply at the same point? You say God gives you this, He may help you make decisions. Neurologists could say, no, it's the brain, the stuff firing off in your brain, and the chemicals that are going on in your brain, and the genetic makeup of your brain that is giving you the ability to make these decisions that are already kind of predetermined by all the way the genes are.
Yeah. Well,
So isn't that kind of like God in a way?
isn't, at that point, it's just up for what you,
Well, where are you getting those beliefs from?
are you getting beliefs from, like, are you, with this versus are you,
Well, any beliefs. Where are they coming from?
they come from your makeup, and grow up, and your life, and your parents have given you, or that your guardians have provided for you and showed.
Okay. Your beliefs don't maybe originate in your brain?
At a certain point, but it's not, it's implanted in there by your parents or whoever raised you.
Through what, the DNA or whatever?
No, through either going to church or either
Oh, okay.
deciding, or your parents and your parents don't go to church or said, hey, it's not that important to us.
So your environment, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, your environment can also maybe affect, but still, your genetic makeup can predispose you to your environment. You can be in a non-believing environment and say, I want to believe. Or you can be you can be raised in a fundamentalist family and lose your faith.
Yeah, but there are statistics behind each. If you are, say, if you are being raised in a, family that's religious, you're probably more likely to come to beliefs. Yes, there is a possibility that you come out of it and you no longer believe in God or you don't practice religion, but there's still that much of a better chance now that we're in that environment that you're going to continue.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Scott. Okay.
I was just gonna say, like, science is just purely like the study of the world around us, based on things that have happened in the past. So I would say it's religion is something separate, it's something that comes to you, and it's not like, my point is just science is the study of the world.
Okay.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
No, it's not the same. Okay, it's a study of the world around us. Is belief involved in science?
Yeah.
How so? How do you think it would be?
Well, how do you define belief?
That's interesting. We define it like faith. Okay, you reason according to the evidence that's given to you that you think is the most reasonable. It might not be, and you think is the most truthful, I guess. If I had to, in a pinch, that's what I would say. And belief is never 100%, so it might have to be revised. We should learn more, have more data.
I'd say yes.
Okay. Interesting. Oh, that's interesting. All right. Just asking, because getting back to my propaganda. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to discuss it with you, get you thinking about it, because now I got to get back to my thoughts. Coffee. Come on, my little friend. I just want you to think about why would a God, and your conception, think about your conception of God. Yes, Ms. Plunkett, you assume God is good. How do you know God's good? How do you know God thinks you're valuable? How do you know that God wants you to benefit and prosper? Written down where? God wrote the Bible? How do we know that? Not in the Bible I have.
Mapped out.
Okay. I should mention there are other books apparently written by God too. And not, yes, Mr. Root.
Yeah, he wants to.
Okay.
Yeah, he
But how do you arrive at that faith?
it's he is. He wants to be.
Okay.
God doesn't want to just look at it and is there a person that how you see.
All right. But also maybe there's evidence. Did you want to say something, Mr. Martin?
Like, yeah, a lot of people feel about their history. I believe that's what free will really is. If we didn't have free will, we wouldn't think like this. We wouldn't say, with God leaving us here, or we not leaving God there, we're a sinful person. If God truly wanted us to only believe in Him, we wouldn't have these kind of thoughts. We wouldn't let us have those kind of thoughts.
Oh, yes. Why do we have those thoughts? Oh, that's another question. Oh, that's good, Mr. Martin. Thank you. Okay. So I just wanted to lay that out. I mean, I guess my main question, I was kind of, we went off and talked about other things, but, why would a God, an authority like a God who wants apparently to control us, tell us what to do? It's kind of like what the Bible's all about, right, Miss Plunkett? Do this, don't do that, stuff like that, Why would he give us reason? Why would he let us think for ourselves and possibly doubt and possibly decide, I'm not going to follow this God. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to have contrary thoughts. So we can look at the world and ourselves, and I think we do get evidence, even without faith, even without a revelation like a Bible or something like that, just how we are, that apparently, if there is a God, he didn't create us as puppets or robots, because we don't act that way. We kind of know we don't act that way, even though there is a current of thought in neurobiology, and if you take I don't know if here at Gwinnett if they would teach this, but certainly at other schools, that we're just biological puppets. Okay, we're determined by our DNA and the genes and the switches in our genes that have been turned on and off. And if you turn some other genes on, then you'll be this, and other genes you'll be that. And these all determine. Yes, environment is important as well, but our predispositions to whether we're going to be, say, a believer or a non-believer, or we like music or don't like music, or like certain foods or don't like certain foods, are going to be pretty much determined by what's going on in our DNA, the DNA that was given us from our parents. And so the idea of a free will, that we're freely making decisions, is really an illusion, because we're not. We're making decisions, but they're based on already in a way predetermined outcomes by our genetic makeup. That's not a religious, that's what's going on in science. I always love it when it's like the Catholics and the evangelical Christians who have to defend free will against the science. It's like, something's topsy-turvy in the world. I'm supposed to be the fool. The believer in fairy tales like free will. Yes. But if God did give us reason to think in an orderly manner, and he wants us to do that, he wants us to think about the world we live in. He made us to think about the world we live in and to make decisions about how to live in that world. Okay. And he wants us to think about him. So he gave us what we call an intellect, the movement of the intellect, understanding, basically. Intelligo in Latin means to understand or to have accurate knowledge of something, okay? Accurate knowledge of something. And that's, again, going back to Mr. Scott, your question about what is belief. I guess you could also say it's accurate, the knowledge of the world that's accurate enough. Enough. It includes a lot of things. It includes science as well, because we only know so much. But again, people try to play religion and science off of each other. Well, if you ask any astronomer, they'll tell you openly that, we know maybe about 20% of the knowable universe. So we know really a very small part of the universe, even because we're just starting. We've only had modern astronomy in the last few centuries, so we're still just taking baby steps in a way. But if someone from, like a priest or a rabbi or an imam, someone asked them about God, can we know everything about God? Well, no, there's mystery to God. He's mysterious. We can know some things. Religion's irrational because you can't know everything about God. Why should I believe in a God then? If it's completely unknowable. Well, it's belief means or you can't know exactly how God is. Well, our belief is accurate enough. Intellect. Intelligo, to understand, accurate enough. Just as our knowledge right now of the universe that we live in is accurate enough. There's 80% more out there for us to learn and actually there's 20%, an actual 20% of that 80% that we'll never learn because just the way we're positioned in our galaxy, we simply cannot see it in any way, shape, or just the way because we're in a material world. We're positioned in a certain way in our solar system. In our galaxy is positioned in a certain way in its galactic neighborhood, and there's just a certain portion that, unless we find some way to look around, we're never going to be able to see it. So the intellect, the power or the ability of the mind, or you could say the brain's ability to reason and understand, where does that come from? I'm not denying that we're made up of DNA and genes, and I totally believe that. I'm not denying neurobiology or science or anything. Yeah, no, I know I have this mass, this organ in my head, this mass of tissue, with all sorts of electrical impulses going on. I know that there are things, genetic genes in it, and they do. I don't disagree that they can determine my proclivities, my personality, my likes, my dislikes. Okay, fine, But I still, and I think as well, just from your experience, that there's something more going on there. You have this ability to think and understand, which, and as you say, ideas pop into your head and memories and stuff like that. Well, the brain is a tool. I mean, it might not necessarily control how you bring concepts together in your mind, which is what thinking is. You're bringing different concepts and relating them and understanding them. The brain provides the arena for that to happen, but not necessarily. Maybe this is where these neurobiologists I've talked about kind of get it wrong in their interpretation. It is an interpretation of the data. Is that it provides the tool, just like the computer here as an operating system, which lets me do things, but I'm the doer. I have to type and do, put the commands in that I want to have happen. The computer's not doing that on its own. So we have an intellect. We can understand things. And that's where the intellect, philosophically speaking, is where we exercise reason. Okay? That's where we make inferences from data, We assume an inference. Like if I saw smoke outside in the hallway, I would infer that there's a fire. Even that might not be true. Someone might be smoking weed. I don't know. Maybe you have a whole bunch of Rastafarians on campus. I don't know. I'm ecumenical, but too far. Sorry. What's the matter? You're living. God bless you, woman. I'm trying to live too, but sometimes I feel up here like I'm dying. But yeah, that's an inference, okay? My genes don't tell me to make that inference. I don't think so. When I see smoke and I think there's fire, I can deduce things. I deduce that if I have 1 and 1, then I have 2 things. That's a deduction. I can make conclusions from data. Those conclusions might be wrong, even about God. And we'll learn in this course when we're talking about Christianity that, people, and we read the Bible, people have made conclusions about the way they thought God made the universe to work or the way God was in relation to people that were not totally correct. Or you could even say they were wrong. But they were still thinking. They were using their intellects as best as they could and within their own understandings. We also have a will. A will, yes. Wulan in Old English. From desire, to desire something, to wish, to want. So the ability to make choices, the ability, I could just decide to come to class today and teach you all, or I could decide to stay in bed. That's my will, making a decision. And our will and our bodies kind of go together. I mean, an act of will. I mean, the fact that I had to tell myself, okay, get up, get out of bed. I'm not saying that I didn't want to be here, but some days it's like that, you know. I can make a choice, and a choice is just a fancy word for when we decide to do something or not. Am I going to get out of bed? But the will is the power to make that choice. It's kind of like the gasoline in the engine, you might say, and then you have to turn the key. You have to decide whether you're going to turn the key or not, and that's choice. From French, ta-da, Old French, choisir, it's probably how they would have pronounced it, and that's how it came into English. That's why we say choice and not choix. Choisir in modern French, the pronunciation has changed. But in medieval French, it was choisir. So choice, to distinguish something, make distinctions, to recognize. Ultimately, it has a relationship to the word to taste, something like food. And a lot of words that we use that are in philosophy or, stuff like that, a lot of them really, when you break them down, they come to very materialistic, naturalistic things. That's why I like to do etymologies, because it can maybe help you understand better, the fancy pants word, intellect and stuff like that, which we could just say the understanding, the will, we could just say desire, or want, my wants. Choice is it's tasting, ultimately. I don't know how you make that, but that's kind of like what's good. Oh, I lost another one. Oh. That happens with, when you do taste stuff, you're making a choice. If you want to decide what you want to eat, no, I don't want that, or, ooh, that's pretty good. I like that. That's choice. You're deciding what you want. You're discerning. And so the belief is, for Christianity, that humans have freedom to create themselves morally, that we decide through our actions, through exercise, through thinking about what we want to do, and through exercising our power to do something or not do something, we decide through our actions what sort of human we want to be. A good human, a bad human, a middle-of-the-road human, A human who hurts people all the time, and there are some people like that in this world. You might have met some of them. But they always end up hurting you. Or they're selfish. They're always just thinking about everyone in relation to themselves and what you can do for them, or other people can do for them. Or there are people who are very altruistic. They're self-sacrificial. They're always helping other people. It's just their natural default. Sometimes they're making these choices. Maybe they have to make these choices. I chose to do this because I know it's a good thing. I've thought it's a good thing. If I didn't do it, I would be like violating myself. I would be making myself into someone I don't want to be, especially if it's something you think you should be doing. Okay, so in other words, to come to a conclusion here, at least for this class, for this week, human beings are designed, apparently, and I'm going just from our design, the way we're designed. I haven't mentioned a God here yet. I'm not quoting from the Bible, okay, or any religious text. I'm talking about just observing our world and how we are as human beings. These things seemed obvious to me. Maybe they're obvious to you. If they're not, that's fine. But it seems like human beings are designed to think about their experience in the world and to choose what to do about it. Choose what we want to do about it. Will. So we're reasonable, we're thoughtful, but we're also responsible. That means we're responsible for what we do. If I choose to go and shoot up someplace, take a gun and go kill a bunch of people, okay, I can choose to do that or not do that. And I might think I need to do that. Some people do for some reason. But they're now they're responsible for it, and there will be consequences. So we are responsible for it. That's an extreme example, but like if I decide to tell a lie, or and they're responsible for those actions. Usually, actions come back on you in some way. Okay. I guess I'll stop here, and I will see you next week on Tuesday. God bless you all. Have a good weekend. All right, so well, doesn't matter. You too, miss. Thank you. All right. Clean.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
You